In this chapter, I want to talk about the urinary system. In this picture, you can see the different organs which we have in our urinary system. You can see right and left kidney. As you see here, the right kidney is a little lower than the left one due to the liver which we have in the right side of our body. After that, you can see two ureters which come down and join with the urinary bladder. The urinary bladder is located in our pelvic cavity, and this is the organ which can store urine for us. And after the bladder, we have the structure which we call it urethra, and the urethra can bring the urine out of our body. The urethra is controlled by internal and external urethral sphincter. The internal urethral sphincter is composed of a smooth muscle, and the external urethral sphincter is composed of a skeletal muscle. In this picture, you can see the hilum of the kidney. The hilum is the indented part of the kidney in the medial side of the kidney. And in this region, we have entrance of the renal artery, exit of the renal vein. You can see the ureter which come out of here. Also, we have the passage of lymphatics and nerves through the hilum. Here you can see the structure of the kidney. And we made a frontal or coronal section on the kidney. You have two major parts in this picture. One part is located outside, and we call it cortex. One part is located inside, and we call it medulla. And with this yellow line, I make a boundary between cortex and medulla. In the medulla of the kidney, you can see two regions. One region of the medulla is pyramid shape, is triangle shape. We call them renal pyramids. And between the pyramids, we have renal column. Actually, the renal column is composed of connective tissue, and in this connective tissue, we have many blood vessels. The tip of each renal pyramid contains many pores in this region, which you see it in blue color. The pores which we have here are called renal papilla, and the renal papilla bring the urine into the minor calyx. Minor calyces combine together and make major calyx, and two or three major calyces in our kidneys can make renal pelvis. And then the renal pelvis continue with the ureter. These are the parts which we can see in this picture. Besides these structures, you can see the renal artery which come to our kidney. This is number 8, and the renal artery is the branch of descending abdominal aorta. And you can see the renal vein, which is number 10, and joined with inferior vena cava. On top of each kidney, we have adrenal gland, which is a part of our endocrine system. In the next picture, you can see the ureters, right and left ureter here, and this is the frontal section of the urinary bladder. When you look at this frontal section, you can see the posterior wall of the bladder and also the thickness of the wall and inside of the bladder. Inside the bladder, we have many folds. The folds are called rugae. The folds are tunica mucosa, which protrude to the lumen. we have transitional epithelium on the surface and lamina propria beneath it, which I will talk about it in the next video for you. After that, you can see the muscles in the wall. The muscles are 3 layers, inner and outer longitudinal and middle circular, but we have a name for this muscle. This muscle, together, all of the layers are called detrusor muscle. The detrusor muscle contraction can help us urination. Inside the urinary bladder, you can see a triangle structure, which we call it trigone. Here is this triangle. In the trigone of the bladder, we don't have any folds. And as you see here, the surface is completely smooth. We have 3 corners for this trigone. One of these corners is here. Number 2, the other one is on the other side, and the other one is located inferior. The 2 which are located on top are the opening of the ureters into the bladder, and the one which is below than the others are the opening of bladder to urethra. In this trigone, we don't have any folds. The other thing which you need to know about this picture is the ureters doesn't open to the top part of the bladder. They don't open here. The ureters go to the back of the bladder and open in the posterior wall. And in this picture, you can see these 2 openings here. The ureter passes about 1 to 1.5 centimeter in the wall of the bladder, and this muscle of the wall can work as a sphincter for the ureter. So we don't have any anatomic valve for our ureters. The next part which you can see in this picture is the urethra. This is the male urethra because you can see the prostate gland around the urethra. And this part of urethra is called prostatic urethra. Between the bladder and the urethra, we have the orifice or opening here. This opening is called internal urethral orifice. And the muscle around it, which is number 9, is called internal urethral sphincter, which is the smooth muscle. And we don't have any control on this muscle. In this picture, you have 2 tubes. They are number 10, and they are the sections of vas deferens in the male urogenital system. This is the other model of the kidney. Again, in this model, you can see number 2 as the cortex, and then you have medulla of the kidney. The medulla of the kidney contains number 3 or the renal pyramids, and between the pyramids, you have renal column, which is the locations of the blood vessels. You can see the renal papilla as number 4. You have minor calyx. Minor calyces can make major calyx, and major calyces can make renal pelvis. And then you can see the ureter. You have number 10 here, which is the renal artery, which come to the kidney through the hilum, and the renal vein, which go out of the hilum and merge with inferior vena cava. And number 1 is the adrenal gland. In this picture, you can see the back of urinary bladder. Number 1 on both sides are the ureter, right and left ureter. You can see the back of the urinary bladder, and you see that the ureters open in the posterior wall of the bladder. In this picture, you can see these 2 ducts. Number 3 they are vas deferens. Number 4 are the paired gland in the back of the bladder, and we call them seminal vesicle or vesicular gland. And then you can see a prostate gland beneath the bladder around the male urethra. In this picture, you can see the coronal section of the kidney. First, I want to talk about the anatomy of the kidney, and after that, I will talk about the blood vessels for you. In the kidney anatomy, you can see the capsule which cover your kidney from outside. This is the fibrous capsule. You have number 1, which is the cortex, and after the cortex, you can see medulla. In the medulla, we have renal pyramids, and between the pyramids, we have renal column. The tip of each pyramid is called renal papilla, open to minor calyx. Minor calyces make major, and major calyces make renal pelvis, and then you can see the ureter. Before I talk about the blood vessels of the kidney, I want to introduce the nephron to you. The nephron is the functional and structural unit of our kidneys. The nephron is responsible for making urine for us. And in this picture, you can see the structure of nephron. In this picture, you can see the Bowman's capsule or glomerular capsule here. After that, we have proximal convoluted tubule. Then you can see loop of Henle. The loop of Henle has descending limb, U-shape, and ascending part. And after that, we have distal convoluted tubule, which open to the collecting duct. The collecting ducts merge together in the medulla and make the papillary duct. Pay attention. In this picture, I want to draw a line. This line is the boundary between cortex in top and medulla in bottom. So when you look at this picture, you see that some parts of your nephron are located in the cortex, like the Bowman's capsule, the proximal and distal convoluted tubule, and the beginning of the collecting duct, and some parts of the nephron, like the descending limb, U-shape, and ascending limb, and the last part of the collecting duct is located in the medulla. So this is the orientation of the nephron in our kidneys. This is the other picture. You can see 2 nephron. You know that one of the nephron is called cortical because it has short loop of Henle. The other one is called juxtamedullary because it has a very long loop of Henle. You can see the Bowman's capsule. You have the proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, loop of Henle, ascending limb, distal convoluted tubule, and collecting duct. You see that this collecting duct receive urine from different nephrons. And in the textbook, it mentioned that up to 5 nephron can bring their urine into one collecting duct. Now, you know the structure of the nephron. I want to show you the capillary which we have in the Bowman's capsule. This is the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule, and the capillary which you can see here is called glomerulus. The glomerulus receives blood from afferent arteriole and it gives its blood to the efferent arteriole. So one arteriole brings the blood to the glomerulus and one arteriole take the blood out of the glomerulus. Now about the blood vessels. If you look at this picture, you see that number 9 is called the renal artery. The renal artery comes to our kidney through the hilum. It makes several branches. The branches are called segmental arteries. Then the segmental arteries move forward in the column of Bertin, or the column between the pyramids. When they are in the column, we call them interlobar arteries. The interlobar artery make the arch shape turn between cortex and medulla, and this arc here is called arcuate arteries. And you can see many arcuate arteries here. From the arcuate arteries, we have some branches which move to the cortex. All of these branches are called interlobular arteries. Now, look at the next picture. What happened to the interlobular artery? If you look at this picture, you can see the interlobar, which is number 3, and number 4 is the arcuate. And from the arcuate, we have interlobular branch. The interlobular artery makes afferent arteriole. Afferent arteriole makes glomerulus, and then efferent arteriole come out. The efferent arteriole wrap around the nephron. This wrapping in the cortex is called peritubular capillary, and in medulla we call it vasa recta. You can see peritubular capillary by number 9 and vasa recta, which is number 10. These blood vessels wrap around your nephron, and when we have reabsorption or secretion in the renal physiology, it happens in these capillaries. And then they merge together and make interlobular vein. Interlobular veins are parallel to interlobular arteries. Interlobular veins merge to arcuate veins, and arcuate veins give their blood to interlobar vein. I come back to the previous picture. Here is the interlobular vein. Number 15 is the arcuate vein, and number 16 is interlobar veins. Interlobar veins join together and make renal vein, which come out of the kidney. For the veins, we don't have segmental. Interlobars join together and make renal vein. This is about the blood vessels which we have in our kidneys. This is the other model of the urinary system. In this model, you can see 2 kidneys, right and left, and 2 adrenal glands on top of the kidney. You can see the coronal section. Number 2 is the cortex. Number 3 is the medulla. In the medulla, we have pyramids, and between the pyramids, you can see the columns. The tip of each pyramid is called the renal papilla, which open to the minor calyx. Then we have major calyx, and the renal pelvis is not visible here. and after that, we have the ureter. You can see the renal artery, which is number 9, the segmental arteries, which are number 10. And number 11 are the interlobar veins, which merge together and make renal vein, which come to inferior vena cava. And number 8 is the abdominal aorta. And the capsule which covers the kidney from outside is called fibrous capsule. The other part of the previous model, these two yellow tubes are the ureters, and as you see here, they come to the urinary bladder, but on the posterior wall. Number 2 is the bladder. On the back of bladder in male reproductive system, we have number 3, which are the vas deferens. Number 4 are the paired seminal vesicle, and number 5 is the prostate gland. I talked about the blood vessels of this model. Now I want to show you the different parts of the nephron. The first part of the nephron in this picture is this part. This part is called renal corpuscle, which is the combination of the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus inside. After the Bowman's capsule, you can see the proximal convoluted tube. After the proximal convoluted tubule, you have the descending limb. Then you can see the loop of Henle, and after that, we have the ascending limb. The ascending limb has one thin and one thick part. After the ascending limb, you can see the distal convoluted tube. And the distal convoluted tubule open to the collecting duct. So these are the different parts of the nephron. The collecting ducts merge together and make a papillary duct which open to the minor calyx. This is the other model. In this model, again, you can see the nephron, different nephron here. The green structures are the renal corpuscle. We have Bowman's capsule around, and inside we have glomerulus, which we can see the glomerulus here. Then you can see the proximal convoluted tubule with the orange color. After that, we have descending limb, loop of Henle, ascending and distal convoluted tubule, which open to the collecting duct. And you can see some of the blood vessels here. Number 1 is the arcuate artery. It makes interlobular artery. From interlobular, we have afferent arterioles, which makes glomerulus, and efferent arteriole come out. The efferent wrap around the nephron. In the cortex, we call it peritubular capillary. We don't have the medulla part to show you the vasa recta. And the veins are interlobular vein, number 11, and then arcuate vein. The other model of the kidney and nephron. First, I need to tell you this nephron is not correctly made here because the nephron should have some parts in the cortex, some parts in the medulla, like these two, but all parts of this nephron is in the cortex and it's wrong. In this picture, you can see the renal corpuscle. You have proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, loop of Henle, ascending, and distal convoluted and then collecting duct. Some of your nephron are shorter, they are cortical for making normal urine. Some of them are longer, they are juxtamedullary, and they make concentrated urine. In this picture, you can see the renal capsule, you have cortex and medulla. And you can see the arcuate artery and interlobular artery, which makes afferent arteriole and glomerulus. And then you have interlobular vein and arcuate vein. Here. In this picture, you can see the vasa recta and peritubular capillary on the other side. Here. You know the different parts of the nephron. You can see arcuate artery, interlobular, afferent arteriole, and efferent, which come out. Then you can see peritubular capillary in the cortex and vasa recta in the medulla. They merge together, make interlobular vein and arcuate vein. Now, all of you look at this picture and find different parts which are mentioned here for you. In this model, you can see more details about the renal corpuscle. First, when you look at this picture, you can see the Bowman's capsule. You have glomerulus. You can see afferent arteriole, which makes glomerulus, and the efferent arteriole, which goes out. Then you have proximal convoluted tubule, descending limb, loop of Henle, ascending part, and then you have distal convoluted tubule. We will work on this histology part next time together. Now, I want to talk about this structure more for you. In this picture, you can see the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule around. The Bowman's capsule has two layers. One layer attached to the glomerulus, we call it visceral layer, and the cells are called podocyte. One layer is located outside, we call it parietal layer, and this layer is composed of simple squamous epithelium. In this picture, you can see the close-up view of the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. You have afferent arteriole, glomerulus, and efferent. You can see the Bowman's capsule, the parietal layer, and the visceral layer. The visceral layer cells are called podocyte. They are star-shaped and they have many feet process here. And they hug the blood vessels as you see in this picture. And after the Bowman's capsule, we have proximal convoluted tubule. On the other side, you can see distal convoluted tubule, which is located between the afferent and efferent arteriole. Distal convoluted tubule and the wall of the afferent arteriole together can make juxtaglomerular apparatus. The other close-up view of the glomerulus and associated structures. This is the afferent, here is the glomerulus, and this is the efferent. Here you can see the Bowman's capsule, the parietal layer, and the visceral layer. The visceral layer cells are called podocytes. And here you can see the proximal convoluted tube. In this picture, you can see the real kidney. This is the kidney, which is covered by fibrous capsule from outside. This region is called hilum of the kidney. You can see the renal artery which come to the kidney, and it makes some branches which we call them segmental arteries. And also you can see some interlobar veins which join together and make renal veins. And then this is the ureter. The frontal section of the kidney, you can see the ureter, the renal pelvis, major calyx, and minor calyx. This is the renal papilla. You can see the renal pyramids, and between the pyramids, you have the renal column. And here you can see the cortex of the kidney. The spaces which you have here between the minor and major calyx are called sinus, renal sinus. In the living person, these parts are filled with adipose tissue. And here you can see the kidneys in the body. You have right and left kidney. This is the abdominal aorta, and you can see the renal arteries on both sides. In this picture, you can see the cortex. Here is the medulla. You can see the minor calyx, major calyx, renal pelvis, and after that we have ureter. Two ureters come down as you see here, and they join with the urinary bladder, which is located in the floor of our pelvis. This is the mid-sagittal section of the male pelvis. In this picture, you can see some parts of urinary system, genital system, and digestive system. Number 1 is the urinary bladder. Number 2 here is the internal urethral orifice, and after that you have urethra. As I told you before, the urethra has 3 parts. The first part of urethra is called prostatic urethra. This is the prostatic urethra, and it's enclosed by the prostate glands. After that, we have a part which we call it membranous urethra. The membranous urethra is the region of urethra which passes the wall of the body, past the urogenital diaphragm. And after that, we have the last part of urethra, which is the longest, and we call it penile urethra or a spongy urethra. And at the end of the urethra, you can see number 6, which is the external urethral orifice. We have 2 sphincters here. The internal urethral sphincter is located in this region, and the external urethral sphincter is here. And the last picture is the female pelvis. Again, in this part, you can see the urinary system, the genital system, and the digestive system. You have the urinary bladder. You can see the urethra. The urethra in female is short. We have internal and external urethral orifice. We can see internal and external urethral sphincter. If I want to mark the internal urethral sphincter, it's located here, and the external is located here. Next time, I will talk about the histology of urinary system for you.